Bigfoot Collectors Club with Bryce, Michael, and Ivan. I know a story of high strangeness or two. Let's do this.
Hello, beautiful Club Scouts of all timelines. Welcome to Bigfoot Collectors Club, the show where we talk to amazing guests about their personal paranormal history and share stories of high strangeness. I'm your host, Michael McMillan. With me always is your other host,
Bryce Johnson.
and our super producer,
Riley Bray. Everyone's talking with their hands today because
Yeah,
we're
I
in the
know.
same room again.
We can see each other in the clubhouse. I can gesture back and
nice.
forth. It's fun. I'm not just staring at lines on a laptop screen.
Yeah, this is great, man. We're in the clubhouse.
Yeah.
And it feels good.
It's been a little light on guests this month, and I apologize because we've just been excited to get back together over at Riley's house and hang out together, frankly.
This is the way to do it, man. We're having fun again and being together, and I'm so glad that that's happening.
Yeah, I hope you guys are enjoying the BCC boy time too. And guess what? A monumental moment is coming to an end. BCC Jet Ski Summer. It's done today.
Wow.
It's the finale.
The grand finale.
We did it,
finale.
guys. We did it.
We Shaver Laked it.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
met some mermaids. We had some wine.
We sang some songs.
We got 1,000 5-star reviews.
We got
which is the
1,000
thing
was
that
all
5
thanks
star
to you
reviews.
guys.
Thank you to you guys.
Never
man.
forget. We don't know what happened between Bryce and Tate the Jet Ski Mermaid, or Riley and
knows?
Tate the Jet Ski Mermaid. So I guess that ending we'll have to wait for another day. But we have a doozy.
Yeah.
A real daze of a subject to get to.
I mean, this is the way to
today.
end Jet Ski Summer, so
Yeah.
I'm so pleased.
Guys, we're going to Atlantis.
Pack your your maritime bags, because here we go.
And I think we're gonna need a bigger boat, you guys. Okay, this is one of those that, like, as I was researching and writing this topic, I was like, "Oh, fuck this! I'm done.
no.
I'm done.
Oh, really?
I'm done." I was like, I'm into it. Now I'm like overwhelmed, and
yeah.
there's just so
It's a lot.
much stuff out there. But we'll
We're
get into it.
We're gonna cut through the.
We're gonna cut through
I
some
can't
of it.
wait.
I think we are. I
Yeah.
think we are.
Yeah.
We also have some cool BCC news and a Jet Ski Summer L file that we got in last
What?
minute from a listener to get to. This is a very power-packed episode.
As it should be.
So look, let's get to the clubhouse keeping. Let's get it out of the way. And I want to say something. If you tend to skip through this section, don't.
Yeah.
Because we have some very important announcements. This isn't a regular clubhouse keeping thing.
You've been called out. Stay here.
And listen, to the person who gave us a 3-star review because of our clubhouse keeping running a little too long,
I had a feeling that you'd
you
bring this
should have
up.
waited a couple weeks because things are about to change, okay?
Yeah.
I already gave myself that note, all right?
You just got to imagine Bigfoot swiffering the clubhouse,
Yeah.
and it'll
Yeah.
help you get through it.
Yeah. Listen,
visualization.
we got a clubhouse to run, all right? We got lights that we got to keep on around here. But listen, this is not so much about plugs, but some important announcements. First and foremost, you guys, our Club Scouts nominated us for an award.
No way.
The very first award that BCC's ever been nominated for. We've been nominated for Best Cryptozoology Podcast by Paranormality Magazine.
Great.
For their Paranormal Podcast Awards. Guys, please
Love those guys.
vote for us at paranormalitymag.com. Voting ends in just a few short days on September 11th, so you got to do it now.
I want an award. That
Please.
stuff's important to me.
Yeah, we need validation.
You want one or
Desperately.
you want
I
one?
want one.
There's a link in our bio on our socials, at Bigfoot Collectors Club on Instagram, at Bigfoot Pod. We'll put a link in the show notes of this episode. Just head over to paranormalitymag.com.
Yes.
And also, Somewhere in the Skies is up for an award.
That's
Vote
what I was
for
going to
them.
say.
yeah.
Yeah, vote for our friends.
Our friends Lizard People,
Absolutely,
Caitlin's
they're
show, you got to vote for that. And of course, Derek Hayes' show, Monsterland
Podcast.
No, Monsters Among
Monsters
Us.
Among Us.
Yeah, so vote for all those. Thanks, guys. And thanks for the nomination. Guess what? A new era of BCC is dawning as we approach our 5th anniversary in October. We are in a partnership with our new network, Wood Elf Media, and we're gearing up. It's all systems go. We're going to have some improvements to the format, some fun, some brand new guests, and a brand new merch shop going up soon. So if you aren't following us on Instagram or Twitter, it's the time to do so, to stay tuned for some exciting announcements. Next week, we will be taking a week off, but we have something very fun planned. Every day next week, guys, every single day, not counting Sunday, but Monday through Saturday, if everything goes according to plan, we will be re-releasing 6 of our favorite episodes in something that we're calling BCC Classics Week. When we're going to have new intros to all these episodes, so a little new insight behind the scenes on each one. We wanted to give new listeners to the show a little buffet, a smattering of the type of tastes.
A poo-poo platter,
Yeah,
if
it's a
you will.
Paranormal charcuterie.
Exactly, of things that we do here at BCC and showcase some of our favorite conversations and topics. So
That's going on the song title.
I think you
Paranormal Charcuterie.
Yeah, it's a little PC for all of you guys. So we'll see you after this episode. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a brand new episode. So enjoy BCC Classics Weeks. All right, let's get into it, Bryce.
Yeah.
We have a jet ski. Oh, wait. Actually, we have one last order of business.
I want to remind everyone to follow, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast app.
Thank you, Riley.
And if you give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, we might read your review on the air, much like this one. Topper 414 writes, "A bit of all right. The show has finesse and style. I do love listening to a bunch of lunatics talk about Bigfoot. I feel right at home. Thank you for putting forth the effort and allowing me to listen to regulated rubbish that interests me."
Regurgitated.
Oh, regurgitated.
That's important.
That's even better.
Regurgitated, because it's like, this is thinly, I think this is a thinly veiled
There's a little bit of a
criticism.
slight in this one.
Yeah,
It's a
I
little
like
bit
it.
of a
I like
slap
that.
in the face.
Hey, listen, we've always said we're just a couple of armchair cryptozoologists here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we'll regurgitate rubbish all day long.
Yeah. The only original stuff is
Yes,
Riley's music.
You guys are like the baby birds, and then we just regurgitate the rubbish into your
Spitting
ear holes.
high strangeness into your little baby beaks.
Yeah. Anyways, this show is great. 5 stars.
Thanks, Topper414.
Love it. Good
we
review.
Appreciate it. All right, Bryce.
Yeah.
We got a last-minute Jet Ski Summer L file that I caught, and we couldn't wait till our next L Files episode to read this one because it pertains to the spirit of the summer. So
Yeah, I'm intrigued.
why don't you read this L file
Here I go.
for us?
Listener story on a jet ski. Hi, Bigfoot boys and guests. That's you, Nova. I have the perfect story for Jet Ski Summer. I grew up on Lake Huron in the 90s. I was a super cool teenager and spent a good amount of time on the jet ski. One beautiful sunny day, my best friend and I were on the jet ski, and the 2 neighbor boys were on another jet ski.
Guys, so many jet skis in this letter already.
So
This
many
is great.
jet
This
skis.
is what
So
we're
great.
here for. This day, there was not many waves, which means the water was crystal clear. We had ridden the jet skis north a few miles to putter above our favorite shipwreck. Side note, this is a beautiful wooden schooner shipwreck in only about 12 feet of water.
Oh.
On the way home, we were taking turns jumping the wake of each other's jet skis.
Sick.
I did that
Super sick.
while goofing around. My friend and I flew off the jet ski. First order of business was checking that our bikini bottoms were still on properly. Once we sorted out the bathing suit situation,
Bryce, did you write this letter?
No.
Is this some BCC fanfic of yours? Jet ski fanfic?
Let me move on. Here we go. We swam back to our jet ski. Looking down in the water as we swam, we saw something. Below us, a sea serpent.
Whoa.
It was about 12 feet long and looked like a giant snake sleeping on the bottom of the lake. A lifelong cryptid enthusiast, I immediately got incredibly frightened. I tried to make sense of it and explain it away in my head. Maybe it was a mangled tree branch. I kept my eyes on it as I swam quickly to the jet ski. As I neared the jet ski, it lifted its head
No.
and watched us. As we scrambled back onto the jet ski, both of us were uncharacteristically silent. Neither of us mentioned it until we were both back safely on the jet ski. We were too afraid to hang out and watch the sea monster. And that's the story of how I mooned a sea serpent.
Nice.
Chef's kiss. After spending most of my childhood looking for Bigfoot out the car window and looking for a Great Lake Nessie, I was so disappointed at myself for being so afraid when I finally found a cryptid. Here's a better description. The sea serpent was about 15 feet long, muddy brown in color, and about as big around as a dinner plate, and it's at its widest part. It had a snake-like face, no pronounced snout. As it moved, we could see its muscles ripple. Ripple, you guys! Thank you for your great podcast, and thank you for your Jet Ski Summer. I would pay for an additional tier of Patreon where you guys perform covers. I cried tears of joy listening to Kokomo.
I mean,
Yes,
I mean, we'll do more covers for the ultra terrestrial.
I mean, yeah. If you guys have requests over there on Patreon for the ultra terrestrial tier of some covers,
You just let Riley know through
just shoot 'em on
Cameo.
over.
That
Let
was
'em
from
know.
Amy. Thank you, Amy.
Amy.
Kisses back to
Amy.
you. Mwah.
Great
Chef's
story.
kisses.
yeah.
Great use of the phrase jet ski multiple times. I really appreciate it. Anytime you had a choice to just say it, you said jet ski. And I appreciate that, guys.
Lake Huron.
Yeah,
Wait,
guess
yeah.
what? You know what? She might have seen something because after reading this letter, I did a little Googling, did a quick Googs, and I found something called the Great Lynx Water Monster of Lake Huron.
That's what Amy saw.
The Ojibwe legends say that there's a giant reptile or serpent creature with large horns that sorry everyone, I'm reading this from 99wfmk.com.
You need not apologize.
That
a great
rules the
source.
waters of Lake Huron. They call it Mishubeshu, which means great lynx, and it dwells in an underwater den at the mouth of the Serpent
Shut
River.
it down.
There are many tales of this creature, and if you visit the area, you wouldn't have any problem finding some old timers to tell you about their and others' experiences with this creature. You can read a lot more about the monster at Township of the North Shore by clicking here. Okay, but
There you go.
There's precedent for
There
this.
you go. There you go.
So
Amy
it's
did
possible
moon a sea serpent.
You
Yeah,
saw
I mean-
Mishubeshu.
She's seeing the face and like the musculature
That's
and stuff.
trippy,
It's
man.
not just a stick in a lake.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
seen sticks in lakes.
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
This is like if the Hook Island monster that we covered on the other side last week or a couple weeks ago was real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Reminiscent of that for sure.
But check it out. Do a little research, Amy. Get back to us. I'm interested if you thought it had any horns. We talked about that this summer too. How a lot of these sea serpents have horns for some weird reason.
you beast, with your devil horns in the name of Christ.
All right, Riley, get ready because Bryce and I have some fresh BCC news.
That was our best one.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
for
best one in
the
years.
same
And that's why we're
room.
back in the clubhouse.
That's right.
people.
This is just a quick nibble of news, but NASA recorded. This is on the Washington Post. I'm looking at it on CNN. NASA recorded audio of what they say a black hole sounds like. I sent this to Riley because immediately. Have you ever wondered what a black hole sounds like? New audio released by NASA reveals the sound created by the cosmic phenomena. Dr. Michio Kaku, professor, we know him from TV, professor of theoretical physics at City University of New York, joined CNN to discuss. But I'm going to play this to you from the Washington Post.
Yeah, drop that track.
Oh, that's metal.
Super.
So creepy, too.
I want to make love to that.
Yeah. I was telling Michael
mine now.
when he sent it to me, I actually prefer Black Hole's earlier work. I found it less commercial. I think it's a little derivative, but, you know, I commend it
I
nonetheless.
preferred your stuff like 5 eon billion years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were going to be like, what does an ancient tone, like hum sound like? Like a godlike,
Yeah.
old godlike.
Well, you
The
know, they
ancient
say
void.
those
Yeah.
old Tibetan monks, when they're chanting, those are the sounds of the universe. Perhaps they're, you know, imitating what they think in their mind is the sound of a black hole.
we should start
feel
like
that.
chanting black hole tones and see what happens.
Yeah, you guys want
love
to start a
that
doom metal band?
Yeah. I mean, we have 3 bands already. Let's start
We
one.
gotta have
my
a
God.
doom band.
Anyway, I thought that was cool.
That's
if you want
really
to check
cool.
out the
So
article, I'll put
amazing.
it in the
That's
show
so
notes
cool.
of this episode. I just thought we got to listen to this.
Cool.
All right, Bryce, what do you got for us over there? This is a
Let's
big,
do
kind
it.
of a big week for some news.
Yeah, I know, man. We got a lot of news. Motherboard, which I like very very much, reports Congress admits UFOs not man-made, says threats are increasing exponentially. Oh, shit, if that doesn't catch your attention. The new budget for America's intelligence services directs the Pentagon to focus its UFO investigation on those objects that it can't identify, says Matthew Gault. After years of revelations about strange lights in the sky, first-hand reports from Navy pilots about UFOs and governmental investigations, Congress seems to have admitted something startling in print. It doesn't believe all UFOs are man-made. Buried deep in a report that's an addendum to the Intelligence Authorization Act for fiscal year of 23, a budget that governs America's clandestine services, Congress made two startling claims. First is that, quote, shut this fucking ad, end quote, cross-domain transmedium threats to the United States national security are expanding exponentially.
Hold on. Cross-domain.
Yeah.
Transmedium.
Yeah.
Okay.
Threats. So
What is that?
CDTTs.
Damn. I don't know
CDTTs.
exactly what that means. I got to look into that. But it sounds like, as we've known and talked about in the past, UFOs are interested in military installations, bases, and personnel. And it sounds like the ticker is heating up over here. Also, the second, it wants to distinguish between UFOs that are human in origin, okay, drones, and those that are not, quote, temporary, non-attributed objects, or those that are positively identified as man-made after analysis. I feel like they're trying to like take away the UFO linguistics from.
Yeah.
They're trying
Well,
to
they
like
are.
strip
They've been doing that for a couple years.
Yeah, I know.
Because UFO.
It's a classic move.
I mean, truly, UFO just means, as we all know, unidentified flying object. That could be.
But it means
that doesn't
more
mean,
than that now.
No. Well, it did, because we've all agreed that UFO is a flying saucer.
Right.
But I think what they're trying to do is be like, well, we can't call UFOs flying saucers because
Yeah, I
sometimes
get it.
it's just a bird that you can't identify,
Right.
or a
This
drone.
sounds just like fucking word soup to me.
Well, that's definitely a thing to like is sort of like create a word soup around an idea or
Yeah,
a topic
totally.
to kind of like fracture it. And
Let's
Yeah,
finish the sentence,
absolutely.
though. It's important
Yeah.
that these positively identified as man-made after analysis will be passed to appropriate offices and should not be considered under the definition as unidentified aerospace undersea. By the way, Bing, 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 undersea is also in
Undersea
there.
phenomena, the document states. The admission is stunning chiefly because as more information about the U.S. government's study of UFOs has become public, many politicians have stopped just short of claiming that the unidentified objects were extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional in origin.
Here's a cross-domain transmedium threat. Here's the definition from the Pentagon. Is something that can move from water to air to space in ways we don't
Ooh, I love
understand.
that.
So the
Sick.
transmedium, the medium is water, air, space.
Do you know what
Right.
can do that?
jet skis.
Thoughts?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
My
Explain.
thoughts underwater right now, dude.
I like
now my
it.
thoughts in outer space.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm at the clubhouse.
Got
Yeah.
it. Great. All right. Cool.
You're a transmedium thought being. And
Pretty-
I'm here for it.
I mean, this is cool.
It's
We're
really
getting
cool.
closer and closer to being like,
It's incredible.
we don't know
Yeah.
what some of this shit is. That's
No.
that's the important first step is to be like, we don't know what this is.
Well, and John Tenney, he dismisses a lot of stuff, but he's interested in a lot of stuff. And he was interested in this undersea UFO thing, this USO, unidentified submersible object. I like this idea of transmedium things because I believe, if these crafts are what they appear to be, they can move through water, through air, through space, just like in
Absolutely.
Flight of the Navigator.
Yeah, I mean, where if you can travel, also a great precedent to set Flight of the Navigator.
Yeah.
So clearly that's how it works.
Guys,
But yeah, if you're traveling through
we
space,
had all the answers in '86.
upper atmosphere, of course you're going to hang out in the ocean.
Yeah.
It only
Where else
makes
would you go?
sense. Well, cool. I love this article. I like
it's cool
the
stuff.
breadcrumb feed that's coming from the media sources about what's taking place in the UFO world.
Yep. It's unfortunate that, like, in order to get funding for it in Congress, they have to wrap it up as a threat. Otherwise, they're not going to
Hey,
raise
man.
money to study it.
Well,
yeah.
it is a threat. If there's something flying above your nuclear silo and that you don't know what it is and can't control it, that's a threat.
No, I get it, but also it's a shame that we can't do it just for fun.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what Space Force is. Space Force
Yeah.
is just for fun.
Yeah,
It's just for the fun
Space
uniforms,
Force.
really.
But we
just for
already have that.
We
fun.
can make bubble helmets. And
Just for fun.
Cool. All right, here's another piece of news from Vice.com. A medieval map has revealed the location of a lost Atlantis, quote unquote, study says. The Lost Kingdom and boy, I'm gonna screw this Gaelic hard, and these are my
I feel bad for
these
her.
are my I don't know how to speak Gaelic or Celtic, so I apologize, and these are my people.
Screw it away.
This might be Welsh also. The Cantrair Gwaelod in Wales is said to have sunk beneath the waves, and now researchers may have identified it. For centuries, rumors have circulated about an ancient kingdom called Cantrair Gwaelod that once existed in Wales' Cardigan Bay before it sank beneath the waves to become the basis for a legendary Welsh Atlantis. The tales of this lost city have shifted over the years, with some saying that a maiden neglected to stop a well from overflowing over the lands. That's right, guys.
Sure.
Blame a woman.
Sure. Yeah.
Blame a woman.
Did I leave the oven on? You left the well on?
While later tales blame a drunken gatekeeper who failed to oversee the dikes. Legend has it that the bells of the sunken kingdom's church can still be heard on quiet evenings. Love that. Now a pair of researchers present new evidence that 2 islands did once exist in the bay based on analysis of a medieval map, folkloric accounts, field studies, and geological surveys. Led by Simon Haslett, honorary professor of physical geography at Swansea University in Wales, the work demonstrates that the existence of the lost islands is considered plausible and offers a possible insight into the post-glacial coastal evolution of Cardigan Bay, according to a study published in Atlantic Geoscience. This study investigates historical sources alongside geological and bathymetric evidence and proposes a model of post-glacial coastal evolution that provides an explanation for the lost islands and a hypothetical framework for future research. Haslett and co-author David Willis, Jesus professor of Celtic at the University of Oxford, wrote in the study, "Literary evidence and folklore traditions provide support that in Cardigan Bay is associated with the lost lowland of Cantrair Gwaelod." Very cool. I'm going to put this in the show notes as well, so you guys can read the rest of this article. But I wanted to talk about this because it sets up perfectly the context for what we're getting into today. And the takeaways here that we're going to get into when we start talking about Atlantis is this idea of taking folklore and all this stuff and then pairing it up with geological science and post-glacial climate changes and looking at, is it possible that a fabled sunken kingdom could actually have been scientifically plausible? And in this case, locally speaking, in Wales, it might be true. Well, and the same might be said for Atlantis.
Sure. And this isn't the first time an article's come out like that. For the last 150 so years, archaeologists, oceanographers have, broken ground on undersea anomalies and said, could this be Atlantis? So rum, hum, hum, drum. We've heard this before, and I don't have a problem with it because we're going to tell you why. It's not about where it is or where it sank.
Are you part giant?
And we're going to let you know why in a minute.
I can't wait to know why. Rum, hum, hum, drum. Is that what you said?
That's right. Yeah.
That's a good catchphrase.
Yeah, this is interesting stuff.
I mean, it sounds like a sunken village to me.
Yeah,
but,
sunken. And it's an island. It's more than just a village. It's an island.
For sure. And we'll talk about it. That maybe this Earth has more stories like that to reveal. Maybe there are, lost civilizations and continents hundreds and thousands of feet beneath the sea floor. We really don't know a lot about what's below the...
Have you guys been following the news, sad news in Europe? They're having such a really bad drought right now.
Yeah.
And a lot of rivers are, low. And they're
talking about the dinosaur tracks?
Well, they found dinosaur tracks.
Shipwrecks.
And they're finding... So all this stuff they're finding just... That's not that deep underwater.
That's just hundreds of feet. Imagine miles down.
Yeah.
If that was unearthed. You know, who knows what's there?
Sure.
Well,
and all the ages the Earth has been through.
That's right.
I mean, they have mapped the ocean floors.
Who, scientists?
Yeah, Graham Hancock even says that, and he...
I'm just kidding.
He likes to...
No, I know. He's done great work on exploring.
We're going to talk about him.
Yes.
Per our tradition, that's BCC News, everybody. We're going to get into the meat of it now, as we've segued so effortlessly.
We've been
We
doing
always-
this for 5 years.
Yeah, we always like to ask. Oh God, we always like to ask Riley when we're doing some of these bigger topics. What do you know?
About Atlantis?
Yeah, what do you know going in?
I would say the majority of what I know is just from that intro to that one Donovan song. You know,
What's the Donovan?
don't-
you
we
don't know the
We're
Donovan
old.
song
No.
Atlantis? Well, Donovan is old. It's from the 60s.
Oh,
I want to hear it.
I'm not
Oh,
that old.
guys.
Can you,
gotta
give, can you
listen.
Yeah,
sing
give
us
us
a little bar?
give us a little
A
bar.
little sample?
Well, so it's like a voiceover in the beginning, right? And he's like, the continent of Atlantis was an island which lay before the great flood in the area we now call the Atlantic Ocean. So great an area of land that from her western shores those beautiful sailors journeyed to the south and the North Americans with ease. In their ships with painted sails, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, that's pretty
That's
good.
cool.
That's
Yeah.
pretty good. I'm embarrassed. I'm sure if I heard it, I'd
You guys,
know
this
it,
is like
I
a,
gotta check it
he
out.
was like hanging out with John Lennon. This is like
All
a
right,
classic.
You
guys.
should remix that. With,
It's a banger of a song, too. When it finally drops, people that you know what I'm
shit.
talking
All
about.
Look, we all know you're the cool one, Riley. It's fine.
Well, you don't. We're all sit down and put on it. I have it on vinyl right over there, next to the new vintage fan I bought
right,
for
well,
the
we'll
on
studio.
our break, we're going to hear that.
We'll
put it on.
listen to it.
All right,
but yeah, I mean, like cursory, right? Like it's like a city that sunk, and maybe like
You've
it was
got
the
it.
root of Egypt
More than
or
just
something.
a city again.
Yeah.
A continent.
The continent of Atlantis.
It's a continent.
Yes,
Okay, well,
but
let's-
yeah, enlighten me.
Great.
We
Lay
will.
it on me.
We'll do that right after this break. We'll be right back with this week's story of high strangeness, Atlantis. I mean, honestly, you just need to listen to this
Yeah,
song.
this is
That's
pretty
all
much
you
it.
much, yeah.
What a banger, though, right?
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
Wow,
That's awesome.
I do encourage everyone. I don't want to say stop the podcast. And
No,
go listen
stop what
to-
you're doing and,
Yeah,
and
go
Google
listen
that
to
track.
that.
Go
Come back.
Google
Give it a
Donovan
Googie.
Atlantis to get into the mood.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, no, is he going to tip our bit? I mean, that's all you really need. And we're done.
I guess I learned everything I
Yeah,
need to
that's
know.
all. Honestly, that's all you need to know.
Pretty close.
All right, let's get into story. More of a subject.
Yeah, for sure.
Having a little crypto history lesson for you today, everybody.
Yep.
Atlantis.
Countless fathoms beneath the sea, the most colorful coronation of all time takes place. For Prince Namor, the mighty submariner, has finally found his long-lost undersea kingdom. And here, among breathtaking pomp and pageantry, he once again dons his royal crown as he is acclaimed Namor the First, Prince of Atlantis, Emperor of the Deep, Lord of the Seven Seas, and Supreme Commander of the Undersea Legions.
Good Stanley.
Excelsior!
Yeah, solid.
These words, written by Stan Lee, opened 1963's Fantastic Four Annual 1 from Marvel Comics, which Stan wrote alongside his famous artist and superhero co-creator Jack Kirby. The double-page spread of this 72 power-packed page issue features Namor the Submariner, a matinee idol model, green Speedo wearing, water-breathing super being sporting a golden crown and red cape in his undersea palace, taking his place on a glittering seashell throne lined with sculpted undersea creatures. He raises a triumphant fist towards a congregation of pointy-eared, blue-skinned Atlantean merpeople clad in what can only be described as retro-futuristic fish armor, standing beneath a large sea serpent who watches over the proceedings with a contented look on its face.
Cool.
It's pretty badass.
What an open.
Even though it's printed in simple 4-color comic book palette of the era, Kirby's illustration immediately tells you everything you need to know about the fabled undersea civilization of Atlantis. Its glory is on full display in wonderful pop art, capturing the majesty and childlike wonder of a legendary undersea kingdom inhabited by an ancient, advanced race. It is vast, powerful, and full of otherworldly technology that evokes an ancient, bygone era, but feels like a set piece from a science fiction film at the very same time. Even though it's set in the fictional Marvel universe, it's so charming that as a reader, and especially me as a young kid, couldn't help but wonder, could this be possible? Could it be that somewhere deep beneath the vast oceans, there might be a sunken world created by an advanced civilization that vanished from the surface of the earth in an age long before our own civilization began to rise. In this episode, we're going to take a look at some of the greatest archaeological legends, one of the greatest archaeological legends of our lifetime, or any lifetime. Now, this is a vast subject, and even though I'd love to call this a deep dive, especially because it's BCC Jet Ski Summer, because there's just so much stuff out there, it's impossible to include it all in one episode. So this will be more of a nice warm dip. But by the end of this installment of High Strangeness, we hope that you and Riley will have a clear snapshot in your mind of the legend of Atlantis. Although writings of ancient lands where gods dwelled existed well before the 4th century BCE, the legend of Atlantis, or at least the name Atlantis, was seemingly coined by Greek philosopher and teacher Aristocles of Athens, better known to the world as Plato. Although he was not an occultist himself, much of Plato's philosophy would go on to inform ancient Greek occultists and esoterics for centuries to come. It is easy to see why. Plato taught that on the other side of the material world we perceive with our 5 senses, Plato called it the becoming, was the realm of ideal eternal patterns known as the being, aka the spiritual realm.
Love that.
One of the major recurring themes in Plato's work was the exploration of what made an ideal society and government, which is the basis of his famous dialogue, The Republic. Atlantis, which would eventually become a major set piece of esoteric philosophy, makes 2 appearances in Plato's works, in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias. The very first mention of Atlantis is in Plato's Timaeus, written in 360 BCE. Timaeus is a dialogue between the philosopher Socrates, Plato's mentor, the philosopher Timaeus of Lorcae, and 2 politicians, Critias and Hermocrates. Now, I'm just sidebar, guys. If I fuck up a pronunciation here,
I think you're doing great.
I don't want to hear about it.
I feel like I'm back in college.
I did take a classical Greek study in high school as a like solo class for extra credit, and made me think about sitting by myself learning about all this stuff. But during a discussion about how great Athens is, one of the characters quotes the classical Greek statesman, lawmaker, and poet Solon, who, after visiting Egypt in 580 BCE, so 200 years before, allegedly translated Egyptian records of a lost continent called Atlantis. It features Atlantis as the enemy of Athens and a threat to the ancient world. It also pinpoints the location of where the continent existed, out in the Atlantic Ocean, west of Greece, past the Pillars of Heracles, or the Strait of Gibraltar. Here's a quote from Timaeus.
For it is related in our records how once upon a time your state stayed the course of a mighty host, which, starting from a distant point in the Atlantic Ocean, was insolently advancing to attack the whole of Europe, and Asia to boot. For the ocean there was at that time navigable, for in front of the mouth which you Greeks call, as you say, the Pillar of Heracles, there lay an island, which was larger than Libya and Asia together. And it was possible for the travelers of that island to cross from it to the other islands, and from the islands to the whole of the continent over against them, which encompasses that veritable ocean. For all that we have here, lying within the mouth of which we speak, is evidently a haven having a narrow entrance, but that yonder is a real ocean, and the land surrounding it may most rightly be called, in the fullest and truest sense, a continent. Now, in this island of Atlantis, there lived a confederation of kings of great and marvelous power, which held sway over all the island and over many other islands also, and parts of the continent.
The second dialogue, Critias, recounts how the island of Atlantis attacked ancient Athens. Now, for some for some context, Plato is writing about a time period that was set roughly 9,000 years before his own time. So over 12,000 years ago for us. During this age, according to the story, the Atlantean Empire had conquered parts of Libya and Western Europe and enslaved its people. The Athenians had assembled a resistance and fought back against the evil empire. Is this ringing any bells to my fellow Star Wars peeps? Athens manages to repel the attack, defeat the Atlantean Empire, and liberate everybody. Not long after its defeat, Atlantis is ultimately destroyed in an earthquake in a single day and night, judged by the gods for its hubris, and the whole continent floods and sinks into the Atlantic Ocean. Here's a passage from Critias.
But afterwards, there occurred violent earthquakes and floods, and in a single day and night of misfortune, all your warlike men in a body sank into the earth, and the island of Atlantis, in like manner, disappeared in the depths of the sea, for which reason the sea in those parts is impassable and impenetrable, because there is a shoal of mud in the way, and this was caused by the subsidence of the island.
It does kind of sound that they're trying to explain why one part of the oceans is a little muddy and hard to sail through.
Yeah, a little bit.
Doesn't it?
Because 9,000 years ago,
Just their best sailor
I
can't
heard
get by
from
there.
a guy.
Right, that's
This
funny.
is the thing that's so wild about this. Like, so Socrates, Plato and Aristotle, his student, who's, these guys, classical Greece. We're talking at a time that's like a little over 2,000 years ago, and we can barely. I mean, obviously there are historians that can do it, but I just think as a day-to-day people going about their business, it's so hard for us. Like 2,000 years ago is a really long time, and just think about what has remained from that day. I mean, obviously we have some history, we have some actual, things that we can try. What am I trying to say? Like artifacts. Thank you.
Yeah.
But really, I mean, there's got to be so much that we don't know about 2,000 years ago.
Absolutely.
So imagine 2,000 years ago thinking about 9,000 years before that.
Right.
It's crazy.
It's pretty much just oral history at that
It's
point.
oral history,
Yeah.
and then
Or written down and passed down
and lost.
text.
A lot of
Yeah.
the stuff
Text.
will come from tablets
Right.
and half-written texts that were half lost, and so your piece and old maps. Old maps comes into this
You
stuff
have to
Gotta love
remember,
an
though,
old
too,
map.
and this is a fair point, even like the Grimm's fairy tale, that was all orally passed down, and not a word was missed in
That's
over
amazing.
1,000 pages of fairy tales, and that was all orally passed down, preserved word for word. So it's possible
I believe it.
to
Well, the Brothers
preserve
Grimm, did the
history.
Brothers Grimm, right? They wrote stuff down.
Yes, but it was all
other
like
stories.
there's an intro in there about how it was preserved. All those stories were preserved orally, pretty much by one woman.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, the power of memorization.
That's right.
Like,
So I've got a very fancy book here called The Empires of Atlantis, The Origins of Ancient Civilizations and Mystery Traditions Throughout the Ages by Marco M. Vigato. And in it, he describes...
a lot of title.
I know.
Pompous.
I just wanted to get into a little bit before we dive in about how Plato described the continent looking.
Okay.
He says the center of the island, this isn't a direct quote, but the center of the island was occupied by a vast plain, which is said to have been the fairest of all plains and very fertile. Agriculture was exceptionally developed. The island possessed an abundant supply of fresh water through lakes, marshes, and rivers. It was covered in forests that were inhabited by a multitude of animals, including elephants. The abundance of black and red stones and the presence of hot water springs further suggest that Poseidonus must have been a volcanic island. It's one of the islands named after Poseidon, who was also, according to Plato, the god who ruled over Athens, obviously.
Yes.
The vast plain that occupied the center of the island was smooth and even, of an oblong shape extending in one direction, 3,000 stadia, or 540 kilometers, or 336 miles, and in the other, another 2,000 stadia. To the north, a range of mountains sheltered the plain from the cold northern winds. These mountains were, according to Plato, celebrated for their number and size of beauty, far beyond any which can still exist. The rest of the island was lofty and precipitous, surrounded by mountains that descended towards the sea on all sides except to the south. So it kind of sounds like the Midwest of the U.S., like the Great Plains to the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, and then you have the ocean.
Yeah.
It sounds very similar in that.
Right. I guess, and now just imagine that in concentric circles, like, because it's
Yeah.
always famously known for being circles and circles and
Yeah.
Sounds like a nice place.
Sounds like a pretty bitchin' place.
I don't know why everyone's so rude and warlike.
I know. Well, we'll get into a little bit of that. Most historians believe that Plato's Atlantis was allegorical, a story created by Plato to show what happens when a society grows corrupt with power. In many ways, it was his Star Wars, a warning about how governments can turn to the dark side and the will of the people must keep the powerful in check. Aristotle, Plato's student, really believed that his mentor had created it as a fictional work. Others believe that the existence of Atlantis was historical fact, and in the past 100 years especially, and some change, it has become popular with crypto-archaeologists who argue, sometimes with very compelling evidence, that civilization on planet Earth is much older than we think, and that instead of culture evolving linearly, we are part of a great cycle of growth and destruction that has repeated itself over the past tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years. Some esoterics, and more specifically theosophists, point to Atlantis as the origin of civilization as we know it itself. Now let's pause real quick here and talk about the Theosophical Society. It came up recently on the show. The Theosophical Society originally assembled, we talked about them a little bit in the Lemuria episode.
Yeah.
It originally assembled in New York City in 1875 on the heels of America's spiritualism movement. It was spearheaded by a Russian native and occultist named Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. Blavatsky's mission was basically to do away with the age-old practice of secret societies and spread occult wisdom and esoteric knowledge to the masses. Although she was a controversial figure herself, often accused of being a fraud, two of her books, Isis Unveiled and The Secret Doctrine, were huge hits and laid the foundation for esoteric thought for decades that followed. The Theosophical Society subscribed to an idea that Atlantis was home to one of the original 5 root races we touched upon a few weeks ago in episode 210, Lemuria. Some Theosophists see the continent of Atlantis as serving as the cradle of civilization, which offers an alternate take on human history and evolution, and at times is mired with a bit of icky revisionist history steeped in casual racism, in my humble opinion, where white people appear to be present in advanced civilizations of the distant past. But honestly, the less said about that stuff, the better. The point is that esoteric practices often look to Atlantis as a source of forgotten knowledge and wisdom, where mastery of energy and occult sciences were achieved by ancient Atlantean sorcerers, perhaps bestowed to them by alien intelligence, perhaps even part extraterrestrial themselves.
I mean, that's why we love this stuff.
This is why we're into this.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Black magic, wizards.
Give me a wizard alien.
Yeah.
It was believed that these ancient practices could still be unlocked and mastered by humans in the modern world. All of this seems to overlook the idea that Plato depicted Atlanteans as the bad guys. Well, Blavatsky says that the bad Atlanteans were subgenetic offspring that warred against Atlantean sorcerers. So there were good Atlanteans and bad Atlanteans, basically. She and other occultists like Rudolf Steiner, who wrote about Atlantis, who was the author of Atlantis and Lemuria, they kind of retconned the original works of Plato. And honestly, this is me talking here. I know we're getting into all this esoteric stuff in just a moment, and Bryce has got some cool stuff, but that's how all of this really felt to me. All of this late 19th century, early 20th century stuff feels like occultists taking burgeoning sci-fi fantasy ideas about humankind's potential in the late 18th century, a bit of Sumerian and Greek mythology, and retconning them all into the antediluvian age of the Old Testament, and behaved now that it was official canonical history. So it makes me feel like if Tolkien had been writing about Middle-earth 50 years earlier, everyone would be working out a way to literally fit it into the history using the Christian Bible as a way in, and then telling everyone we descended from elves.
Wait, is that not the case?
It could very well be, honestly.
Oh.
Because there was a lot of Bible history back in this day and a lot of occult history and mythology, but science fiction and fantasy as we know it was just really in its early stages, a lot of these cool ideas that would go on to be the basis for stuff like Stanley and Jack Kirby's Marvel Universe, instead of being written down as fiction, were made to fit into history, and it rewrote the past. You know what I mean? That's how this feels to me. It's sort of, but these people were, it was sort of new burgeoning religions that had this like ancient philosophy and sci-fi retrofuturism all baked into it.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and if you think about it, if you're growing up in that time and you're growing up in America, and we're going to get into a figure like this, really your big work of sci-fi fantasy action is going to be the Bible. You know what I mean?
It's true.
Because it's got all that stuff in it, but you don't have... You know, you don't even have H.G. Wells until Jules Verne towards the end of the 18th century. You don't really have this sci-fi fantasy as we know it today is really a pretty young genre. So I think a lot of those early ideas and a lot of people who might have gone on to become sci-fi fantasy authors if they were born later were sort of taking these ideas and looking to the past and looking at ways of rethinking where we came from, you know?
Sure.
So one such author who retconned Plato and helped popularize the ancient myth of Atlantis was one Ignatius Donnelly. Donnelly was a pretty interesting guy. He was born in 1831. He was the son of an Irish immigrant who settled in Philadelphia. Donnelly grew up to become a lawyer and eventually got into politics as a radical Republican, which meant something very different back in then than it does today.
Very different.
The political spectrum in those days was inverted, and a radical Republican was pretty much a left-wing liberal. You know, give or take some stuff here and there. Donnelly and his fellow radical Republicans fought for the total eradication of slavery and for women's suffrage. They opposed ex-Confederate soldiers holding political offices in the South after the Civil War. They fought for the right for freedmen and freed slaves and people of color to have the right to vote, and rallied against corruption in politics, voting, and biased and false reporting in the news. Although he would eventually become a Democrat, then an independent, and finally a populist, everything was a political upheaval back in those days. Donnelly was an early civil rights activist, and he also got into some esoteric shit.
As we do.
In 1882, Donnelly published a book called Atlantis, the Antediluvian World. It's in this book that Donnelly proposes a few ideas that will stick with the Atlantis was a real place camp. Donnelly thought Atlantis existed in the period between the fall of man in the Garden of Eden up to the Great Biblical Flood, where the story of Noah's Ark comes from. In fact, Donnelly suggests that it was actually the very flood which wiped out that involved Noah that wiped out Atlantis. Its survivors would go on to establish what became both the Mayan and Egyptian cultures, hence why they share such similar affection for pyramids and similar mythology. And in 1889, he published another book called Ragnarok, The Age of Fire and Gravel, which went further on to explain that the Great Biblical Flood and the subsequent destruction of Atlantis was caused by a comet that collided with the Earth.
I mean, to your point, that's a very fucking George R.R. Martin-esque title. Ragnarok, The Age of Fire and Gravel.
These guys would have been
that's good.
They're the George R.R. Martins of their and Tolkien of their
They're like,
times.
oh, that's good. That's really good. Yeah.
but they're applying it to actual history and biblical history instead of writing it as fiction. And then people like Madame Blavatsky come and other contemporaries, and they all start feeding off each other, and suddenly you have
it's a bad loop.
Well, and some of it's fun, but
it's like the sci-fi biblical cinematic universe.
Yes, and it kicks
building
off new occult religions and new cults and clubs, and you know, these guys are kind of like early L. Ron Hubbard's creating Scientology. Like everything's shifting around this time in history. Also, Bryce, you'll appreciate this. Donnelly was an early adapter and author on the subject of Francis Bacon being the true author of Shakespeare's work.
Oh, good. Okay.
Which he expounded on in a book that he wrote called The Great Cryptogram.
Okay, good. I knew I liked him.
Although he was criticized and ostracized by the academic world and labeled as a crank and pseudoscientist, we can thank Donnelly for thinking outside the box and fighting for civil rights, and Donnelly's idea that some great geological event is responsible for the destruction of Atlantis is still upheld by cryptoarchaeologists today. I kind of want to learn more about this guy. I'm sure there's probably bad things about him too.
Yeah, but he had the right.
He did some good
Sounded
stuff.
like a good moral compass.
Yeah, he was like,
I like dudes like that.
He was too radical for Lincoln. There was shit that he wanted to do that when he was in Congress, when Lincoln was like, that's a little too far.
He's a man ahead,
Like,
he's a man ahead of his time.
he
like
excommunicated from the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
He was just like, fuck this.
He'd be a Patreon member.
Yeah,
for
he
sure.
struck out
for
on his
sure.
own.
For sure.
In the book Fingerprints of the Gods, author Graham Hancock wrestles with the fact that there is zero evidence of a lost continent the size Plato described in the Atlantic Ocean or in the Indian Ocean. But he puts forth the theory that Atlantis may be hiding in plain sight. We just need to direct our eyes to the South Pole. Hancock suggests that a cataclysmic shift in the Earth's crust around 12,000 years ago may have relocated Atlantis to the South Pole, where it was covered in ice, becoming the continent we know today as Antarctica.
Yeah.
Riley, what's that look on your
Yeah.
face?
I don't know.
Well,
I don't know about all that.
Well, in Fingerprints of the Gods,
Riley?
they have like, it starts with them finding these old medieval maps that are copied from even older maps, and it seems to show the continent of Antarctica before there was ice on it,
Sure.
All right.
with like
I mean,
horses and trees.
I mean, with the amount that the climate's changed over
Listen.
tens of thousands of years.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
What do
Maybe.
magnetic poles do? They reverse when inflicted by an outside agent. Don't get me started on pull shifts, Riley. Okay, I love a good pull shift theory, Michael, like the next guy, and I think there's a strong argument to be made that our sun has a sister star.
We have a son?
That our
Why
sun-
haven't I met him?
No, listen.
Why are you keeping me away from our son, Bryce?
There's a strong argument to be made that our sun has a sister star, okay? And is part of a binary star system. Most stars are part of a binary star system. And pole shifts do in fact occur on planet Earth and have since its primordial beginnings. But that's discussion for another episode.
Well,
Wait,
is it?
hold on. When you say binary star system, what do you? What is
Okay,
A
this is
sister
great.
star.
So
Wait,
basically, I'm gonna break it down for you right now.
Okay.
That so as Earth rotates around the sun, the sun is actually moving through an orbit through space as
Sure.
well.
Yeah.
In orbit
Sort of a
with a
spiral.
dual star, a sister star, and as their orbits come closer together, they actually
Bullshit.
intertwine, and they do a little like circle, like a do-si-do around each other before being sent back out into the outer reaches of space.
Did you know that Sirius B is a sister star, it has a twin star, and the Dogon tribe of Africa knew about it before our astronomers?
That's cool.
So wait a minute, I'm going to get into
Yes.
this.
But then, do we know about our sister
Well,
star? If the
we-
Dogons
I'm about
figured
to
that
tell
one
you
out?
something.
Some Harvard astronomers have a wild new theory that the sun used to have a companion star, making our solar system a binary one during its ancient history.
And there's also a theory that we still do have a binary sister star, and it's all part of the precession of the zodiac in the night sky. It has a lot to do with the wobble of the Earth and why the Earth wobbles, because they think it's part of the gravitational pull that's part of the larger orbit with our binary star,
Okay.
our binary star system. So
Didn't you know you're going to be learning
Hold on.
about our sister star tonight, did you?
So, remember earlier when I said that a lot of this stuff comes down to this idea that societies have like have grown and been destroyed, created and destroyed over
Right.
these cycles of time?
Yes.
Well, there's this thought that that's all related to the movement of our binary star system.
Okay.
So this theory is actually the basis of the cyclical construction-destruction of human culture. Some people think that we are still in a binary solar system, and the further we are from our sister sun, the further away we are from our highest points of civilization. Like an orbit, we cycle from Golden Age to Silver Age to Bronze Age to Iron Age, back to Bronze Age to Silver Age, and finally back to the Golden Age. When our sun is closest to its sister star, we are in the Golden Age. When we are furthest from it, we are in the Iron Age. And guess where we are right now?
The plastic age.
We are in the Iron Age.
Yeah.
We're basically living in the dark night of the soul. we're starting
Sounds
to
about
come
right,
out
right?
of the furthest point away from our sister star, but these periods are all broken up into thousands of the
Which
years.
is why our astronomers can't see it.
And the precession of the
Equinoxes.
the equinoxes and the astrological charts are markers of how close we're getting to our sister star. This is the idea. This is called the idea of the Great Ear or the Kali Yuga. It's widely explored in much greater detail in this book, The Empires of Atlantis. Also, there's a very fun YouTube video that I'm going to find that's narrated by James Earl Jones that explains all of this shit, and it's
That'll
awesome.
help. I love that.
It's great.
Great.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, I will
although
send
I feel
that to
like
you,
if
and
I
I'll put it
click
in the
that,
show notes.
then the
You'll
algorithm
dig it. You'll
will-
dig it, dude. It's cool. It's cool shit.
There is something to it. I do like it too.
But is
And,
there a star we can actually point to in the sky
well,
and
it might
say
be a
that
darkened,
one?
it might be a burnt out star, and we wouldn't be able to see it, right? It might be a white dwarf star, which is burned out, and our cameras haven't detected
I
it.
don't know if
Not really sure.
I
about
don't
that?
know if
What
there's
about that,
like
James?
it's got to
What?
be this star that we're paired with. The video, that YouTube video that I watched years ago, might talk about that, and I just can't remember. This is sort of we went off on a little tangent here.
And
This
that's okay,
isn't
but
stuff
it's,
that we were trying
it's
to
important
present.
to know that maybe civilizations rise and fall. Now, look, I love.
Well, yeah, it's definitely
But then-
civilizations.
but then
rise
start
and
back
No,
fall,
that
but
we
like
don't know about
on
it.
the
That
cycle
we don't
of
know about it.
Okay,
That- that's happened
I'm gonna
before.
go along with it. Keep going.
Yes. I love the Star Wars analogy and this idea of a great cycle. Read Lost Star of Myth and Time by Walter Crittenden.
Just
I
throwing
propose
references out.
I propose that Plato knew about the Great Cycle, just like he knew about the secret history of Atlantis. So what did he know and why? Let's get into it.
I'm just picturing when Riley scores this episode. Anytime we bring up the Kali Yuga or the Great Ear, is going to go. Wah, wah.
No, don't do that.
No,
don't do that at all.
It's gonna be really.
It's going to be
moody.
it's fucking solar, man.
Yeah.
In her book, America Before Man, Elizabeth Chesley Beatty echoes your earlier point, Michael. In referring to the legend of Atlantis, she says, quote, "It's not surprising that very little satisfactory evidence has been found since Atlantis, if it ever existed at all, disappeared long before the memory of mankind. And at the rate of normal movements of land, it would have required millions of years for so large an island to subside into the depths of the sea." Solid point, right? Making it hard to fathom such a vast continent seeking into the ocean in a day and a night. 24 hours. But that should give us a hint, right? A clue. Plato was a smart man, and he knew, or better yet, he was instructed to hide all kinds of esoteric knowledge within the story of Atlantis, using the language of symbols. As Manly P. Hall, author of Secret Teaching of All Ages, points out, quote, "From a careful consideration of Plato's description of Atlantis, it is evident that the story should not be regarded as wholly historical, but rather as both allegorical and historical. Plato's Atlantis symbolizes the threefold nature of both the universe and the human body. The 10 kings of Atlantis are the tetractys, or numbers which are born as 5 pairs of opposites. If Atlantis be considered as the archetypal sphere, then its immersion signifies the descent of rational organized consciousness into the illusionary, impermanent realm of irrational, mortal ignorance. Both the sinking of Atlantis and the biblical story of the fall of man signify spiritual involution, a prerequisite to conscious evolution." And I love this stuff because it's basically a way of saying, somebody's got to get this party started right. How can you ever lift the veil if the curtain never got dropped down in the first place? And lest we forget about the most important artifact and symbol on
I'm still trying to follow.
Just
that
go
one.
with it.
Yeah,
It's
The
a
great
cool sounding
continent.
analogy.
of Atlantis, the gigantic mountain in the center that touched the ether, the axle mountain of the world, or Axis Mundi, sacred amongst many cultures, all cultures, is symbolic of the head, or as I like to think about it, never not the center. Hall writes, "In the midst of the central island of Atlantis was a lofty mountain which cast a shadow 5,000 stadia in extent, and whose summit stood the temple of the gods, gave rise to the stories of Olympus, Meru, and Asgard. It was called the City of the Golden Gates. The capital of Atlantis is the one now preserved among numerous religions as the City of the Gods or the Holy City. Yet make no mistake, Hall stresses that, quote, this does not mean to imply that Atlantis is purely mythological, but it does overcome the most serious obstacle to acceptance of the Atlantis theory, namely the fantastic accounts of its origin, size and appearance, and date of destruction, 9600 BC, which I think is great because now we can move past all this stuff, all the dates and the times and the locations and all that stuff that doesn't make sense or that we just can't verify.
So throw out all that, throw out any of the... any of the specifics.
Any new maps
This is where we're
people
gonna
find.
but this is where
Yeah.
this is where Bryce and I might argue about this. Like Plato's like, no, it's in the Atlantic Ocean, but in the late 18th century and early 1900s, or sorry, late 19th century, I said
Right.
18th century.
That's
a while
just
ago,
filler
too.
for his symbolism.
Yeah, I gotta
Okay.
say, this is where you got me back on board.
Okay, that's filler for his symbolism. Now, here's something you may have not known. Plato was initiated into the mystery arts inside the Great Pyramid of Egypt by the high priests themselves.
Really?
Yes. So
was he?
Perhaps, yes, he was.
Cool.
Look it up. So perhaps as
Quick
repayment.
Wait, that's your job.
Okay, well, he was.
He's saying.
I promise
Fact
you, he
check.
was.
He is saying.
Plato's
Yeah.
initiation. It's a
Google.
great play.
They were all in the mystery schools.
Perhaps as a repayment to those who initiated him, he was assigned a twofold task. Number one, tell of our ancestral progenitors, the great Atlanteans. And number two, disseminate divine knowledge through symbolism and allegory. And once we can begin to distinguish between the language of symbols and the language of written history, only then can we decipher Plato's great dialogue. After which, we're left with a most profound question indeed. Was the religious, philosophic, and scientific knowledge possessed by the priestcraft of antiquity secured or taken out of Atlantis? In other words, let's assume for a second that there has been in the past great cycles of rising civilizations and falling civilizations that we know very little, if nothing about. And maybe let's assume that there are those who are chosen to keep record. Knowing the end was near, did the high priests of Atlantis smuggle out the sacred knowledge in an attempt to preserve it? Were they helped?
I just want to interject something here to help this idea of what we're talking about, like these ancient civilizations have been wiped out. Like there's some proof, there's not proof, but there's evidence that the Sphinx was actually built in a time when there was water before
Yeah,
it was
I've
a
heard about
desert,
that,
because there's
yeah.
signs of erosion. They also
Yeah,
think
that's the work of Schock, Robert Schock and John, the mystery of the magical Egypt.
And they also talk about how they think that
Robert Schock, yeah.
the Sphinx was originally a lion and then the face was carved in a much later date.
Oh.
But if you go back and do the math, when that area would not have been a desert in Egypt, it was thousands and thousands of years before classical Egyptian society was around. So they're saying this thing may have been left over from a time when there was an advanced civilization that got wiped out from some
Pre-Egyptian
cataclysmic
advanced civilization,
and then
right.
that as it over thousands of years society built back up, they found this thing and they were like, okay, well, this is obviously an important site, and they sort of like build back
build
up.
off it.
They build off
They
it.
did a yes and.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I'm reminded of another story about
They
smuggling.
yes-anded the Sphinx.
They yes-anded the
and
Sphinx.
built pyramids.
Exactly.
The and was the pyramid.
Exactly. Yeah.
If cataclysm was imminent, Michael, what would you grab, your toys or your comics?
Well, this is a choice that I hope I never have to make.
Mm-hmm.
I will say toys because comics are mostly digitized now. So if I really wanted to read them again later, I could.
Riley, what are you grabbing?
My Les Paul.
Okay.
Man.
Yeah,
Well, I
man.
love this idea about smuggling out your treasures, right? The Knights Templar, under persecution from King Philip IV, snuck out the holiest treasures of Christendom from the Temple Mount and escaped to Scotland and possibly even the New World. So let's explore further this idea that perhaps the Atlanteans did in fact exist.
What's the holiest treasure? The
The Ark of the
Grail?
Covenant, the Holy Grail, and the sacred menorah.
Wow, this just all connects.
that was important.
Well, that's different. That's just another story of smuggling out treasure. But the true treasure, as we'll see, is not treasure.
It's knowledge.
I
That's
told
right.
you
Yeah.
Atlantis kind of fried our brains. This
No,
week.
it's okay. Let's
you
keep
guys
going.
are just some
No, you're good. It's good.
hessian
It's good.
antediluvian
Let's explore
dudes.
further the idea that the Atlanteans were real and that they knew their great civilization was going to be buried under the sea, that it was just a matter of time.
Sort
and
of
so,
like no.
That's right.
And the Kryptonians.
And so, like Jor-El, who sends forth Kal-El to mankind as a last hope, so too did the high priests
do that.
of the sacred feather set sail in their most seaworthy crafts and sailed in all directions to disseminate whatever they could to save not only their culture but to advance others as well. More than culture was the true treasure they were sailing with, the divine knowledge of who we are, where we come from, and where we're going. And so let's examine some evidence that suggests this could have been the case. Atlantean sun worship has been perpetuated in ritual and ceremonies of both Christianity and pagandom. The symbols of Great Atlantis are the cross and the serpent, and can be found throughout virtually all cultures. In Central America, the feathered snake or plumed serpent was applied to Quetzalcoatl, as well as the Central American initiate Kukulkan. From the secret teachings of all ages, quote, the mythologies of many nations contain accounts of gods who came out of the sea. Certain shamans among the American Indians tell of holy men dressed in bird feathers and wampum who rose out of the blue waters and instructed them in the arts and crafts. The Chaldeans.
Everyone, let's get
So
around, grab some
sick.
macaroni and some glitter and glue.
But
What
there's
does this
more.
great seabird man come to teach us?
The Chaldeans from early Babylonia tell of Oannes, a partly amphibious creature who came out of the sea and taught the people to read, write, study the stars, and establish a form of government. Among the Mayas, it's said that Quetzalcoatl came
Quetzalcoatl.
Quetzalcoatl, however you want to say it, came out of the
That's how you
sea, instructed the people in the essentials of civilization, and then rode back out again on a magic raft made of fucking serpents.
They also think that Quetzalcoatl might have been a comet.
I mean, we're hitting on some core Jet Ski Summer shit right now, you
Yep,
guys.
yep.
This is what the Club Scouts want. They came for the Bigfoot, but they're staying for the high water related strangeness.
Whoa, it's all come full circle. Just like the Great Year.
Could it have been Atlantean priests that came out of the water?
That is so pitted, so deeply pitted. This like dude coming out and is like, "Hey, I'm here to teach you about
Yeah.
like
Imagine them
government
arriving
and
before
how
shore,
to
putting
read
on
and
their
write."
wampum feathers and making a big entrance.
I
Guys,
love
at
it.
the end
It's
of this
so
episode,
cool.
one of us will be revealed to be an Atlantean sorcerer.
Manly Hall continues, quote,
All that primitive man remembered of the Atlanteans was the glory of their golden ornaments, the transcendency of their wisdom, and the sanctity of their symbols, the cross and the serpent. That they came in ships was soon forgotten, for untutored minds considered even boats as supernatural.
What do you guys think about this idea of seeing a ship and not being able to perceive it for what it is?
I've heard about this. This is the idea that I had heard, and I don't know what this phenomenon is called off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But literally, when like Cortez's ships landed,
Yeah.
the native people like literally could not see the ships
Well, they saw something,
until
but
they were like close to shore because their brain was like
they'd never seen a sailing
their
vessel
brain
before.
computer didn't know how to
Right, so they
process it.
so they
Yeah,
perceived
yeah,
it
no
as
context.
supernatural. Think of Arthur C. Clarke's third law. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable
So wait a
from
minute.
magic.
Are UFOs
Exactly.
just boats from space?
Yeah, they're space boats, dude.
Maybe we can't perceive what the UFO is, and it comes off as some light vehicle,
Sure.
some shimmering metal light vehicle.
I think that makes
when
sense.
maybe it's not that at all.
Yeah.
There is the archaeological conundrum of why. I'll say that again. There is the.
I'm not laughing at that.
There is
this
the-
whole thing is a conundrum.
Oh, there is the archaeological conundrum of why all cultures all around the globe are erecting pyramids. And please don't tell me that it was a testament to humanity's warmth of showcasing their importance. I don't want to hear that. Hall goes on to say, quote,
Wherever the Atlantean proselyted, they erected pyramids and temples patterned after the
Proselytized?
great.
no, proselyted.
What's proselyting?
I don't know.
mean?
that
Same
word
thing,
either.
proselytize, preach from, or give instruction to.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Wherever they proselyted, they erected pyramids and temples patterned after the great sanctuary in the city of the Golden Gates. Such is the origin of the pyramids of Egypt, Mexico, and Central America. The mounds in Normandy and Britain, as well as those of the American Indians, are remnants of a similar culture.
Now, look, I just want to be clear here. This is not another example of the white man sprinkling his history throughout time. This is coming from Manly Hall, founder of the Philosophical Research Society, one of the largest collections of ancient texts and esoteric and occult knowledge in the world. Okay, if you don't know who he is, look him up. Another point. We don't even know if the Atlanteans were from Earth. They could have been intergalactic colonizers for all
I
we
mean,
know.
some people think they were hybrids.
Hall writes, in the midst of the Atlantean program of world colonization and conversion, the cataclysms which sank Atlantis began. The initiate priest of the sacred feather, who promised to come back to their missionary settlements, never returned, and after the lapse of centuries, tradition preserved only a fantastic accounts of gods who came from a place where the sea is now.
Have you ever heard of the term cargo cult?
No, but it sounds like a
So it's this idea
Star
that
Wars thing again.
American delivering goods or anybody delivering goods or missionary services, they arrive along these Pacific Islander villagers and they see that these cargo planes are disseminating goods and then they leave. And so they
this is the
build,
gods must be crazy.
they build cargo planes made out of banana leaves and they pretend to like call radio receivers on their coconuts because they think that if they do the correct ritual and perform it properly, goods will come back to
interesting.
them.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
So maybe
Yeah.
this is the same
It's
type
like
of
causation,
phenomenon.
correlation, sort of human behavior thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
Manly Hall leaves us with this final thought.
Before Atlantis sank, its spiritually illumined initiates, who realized that their land was doomed because it had departed from the path of light, withdrew from the ill-fated continent, carrying with them the sacred and secret doctrine. These Atlanteans established themselves in Egypt, where they became its first divine rulers. Nearly all of the great cosmological myths forming the foundation of the various sacred books of the world are based upon the Atlantean mystery rituals.
And that's it. So it's
Case
And
closed.
that's it.
case closed. It's not just an island. It's more than that.
Well,
It's a
but
way of life.
I guess if I'm listening to this at home, what is it an island? Is it literally an island where literal ancient priests came from after their land was destroyed by earthquake, comet, or flood?
Yep, that's the great question, right? And so now you have to have that play in your mind. Is that how it took place? Or I like to think, that doesn't make much sense either because we might know about it. Perhaps there is some type of extraterrestrial intervention here, gatekeeping these records and disseminating again amongst initiates of the world, like Kukulkan, Quetzalcoatl, you name it. And however you want to look at it.
That's how it's pronounced.
And they become the divine initiates, and they start disseminating the knowledge that they learned about Sirius B's sister star, about astronomy, astrology, about the great cycle of time that wipes away
So we're
civilizations
also relating
and
this to
Earth.
Mayan calendar.
All
Yeah,
of
oh,
it.
yeah.
It's all antediluvian.
And Donnelly actually was with Hall, and I think preceded Hall. When was Manly P. Hall writing?
in the early 20s.
So he was in the mid to late 1800s. He was like he thought that the Atlanteans did the same thing. So I think Manly Hall's also borrowing from Donnelly as well.
He mentions
and
him in there, yeah.
Donnelly says they went to Central America and they went to Egypt, and that's they went all around.
Donnelly, the thing I have with problem with Donnelly is he's like, this happened right around the Garden of Eden thing,
No, not around the Garden of Eden. In between. In fact, he's saying it was. So the antediluvian period specifically is the period in the Bible, in the book of Genesis.
No, I know. I get that.
Well, people listening may not know.
No, I don't know. Yeah.
Between the fall of man at the Garden of Eden,
Yeah.
whether that was literal or not,
Right.
up to the flood. So in that period in the book of Genesis, there's all this stuff about who begat who begat, and like how the other thing that comes into all
And
this stuff
somewhere
is,
in the world, the Atlanteans were living out their high civilized society.
yes, in this period,
I don't buy
in this in this time period.
Why not?
I'm saying the story here is that is that
I didn't get to finish my point.
Well,
It's
I know,
okay.
but
We got the gist.
we got the gist. But
Why don't you buy that?
here's what it is. The symbol is Atlantis didn't exist. This is a tale as old as time. Civilizations rise and fall, and there is no Atlantis. Atlantis is the Earth.
Yeah.
Atlantis is you.
It's
the
a state
axis
of mind.
mundi,
Yeah.
right. We are in Atlantis now.
Yeah.
So it's allegorical.
The Earth
Yeah.
goes through great cataclysmic changes.
Sure.
That fuck everything up.
Right.
Everything up.
Yeah.
And we're going to get ours too someday. And this great cycle will continue, and civilized man will fall and rise again. And we see clues and evidence of it all the time on the ocean floor. And we know nothing about it.
Yeah.
Nothing. And
Yeah.
history is scrambling to make up the margins.
And Atlantis is like sort of a
Atlantis
metaphor
is an
and an
idea.
allegory.
Well, but here's
for
the thing, because
a passage of time.
this is
over
the
all
whole
of
problem
this.
with Atlantis, because there are still people who are like, nope, Plato said it was a place and we've got to find it. And if we can't find it, then it means that it didn't exist. What
Right,
Bryce
but
is like,
there are
but
also
that's
people that like think that the Earth is flat on top of a giant turtle. So
Yes.
there's people that think a lot of
But
things.
this is this whole thing. What we're getting into right now is the sort of problem and fun with Atlantis, because we really don't know what the fuck it is, or if it's allegorical or if it's literal.
I think
or
it could be both.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we might be Atlantis because
Yeah,
this
sure.
is going to end up underwater.
Sure, absolutely.
So maybe it's just it's a prehistory, but it's a story, a warning.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, like an idea, a lesson, and then also a real place, right? Because there were ancient societies that obviously had great wisdom. We've gotten to where we are today. I like this whole rise and fall. When you guys start getting into like the rise and fall of human society mirrors this like star system, I'm like, we're not that special and important. Like I think the rise and fall of our societies like mirrors our own behavior.
But they also
and
talk
consciousness.
about how, like, in this stuff, which this is not going to help convince you, but as we're moving through the universe on this great orbit, we're literally passing through different cosmic rays that affect our state of mind and our state of being, and radiation is hitting the Earth at different levels and different frequencies that fuck up the way that we behave and the way that we feel.
I mean, we're being bombarded by death at all times, but and like burning ourselves alive, breathing oxygen. But like, I mean, when it starts getting into that kind of like explaining away human patterns based on cosmic significance, I'm always like, I'm out.
Yeah.
You know?
Man, I gotta tell you, if you look more into this Kali Yuga shit, it's pretty fucking rad.
You know what?
It's really
it's
rad.
cool. Don't get me wrong. It's super cool. Like it's something that I would like to like make a doom metal album about, the return of the second sun or like whatever. But do I like actually think that is what is like governing the rise and fall of society? Like, no,
totally. Yep.
I really don't. I think we are governing the rise and imminent fall.
Well, I don't think
of
it's
society.
governance so much as it's correlation, and there's a difference. It's
Right.
like weather. It's weather.
Yeah, it's a great cycle
It's cosmic
of time,
weather.
you know?
It's cycles and cosmic weather. It's not that the stars dictate what happens to us here and vice versa. But
Right.
there's a correlation, there's a symbiosis with literally the way that we're moving in orbit through space and what happens. So there's a sacred geometry to it, I guess.
There's definitely a sacred geometry to like the movement of space, and we are like,
we should go back and tell people to get just super fucking high before they listen to this episode.
spark them if you
my
got 'em.
Atlantean story has the intervening of extraterrestrial help. You know, it has taking the initiate priests off Earth, perhaps, while these cataclysms occur.
There is something for everybody.
Yeah,
in
there's
Atlantis
a little bit for
fan
everybody.
fiction.
The point is you can have whatever Atlantis you want. The idea is the same. We know nothing about where we come from. All we have is our oral tradition and our ancient texts that tell us, a lot of them, cultures, that oftentimes, as I pointed out, God seemed to come out of the sea and point us to the stars and point us in the way of the crafts and the mysteries and the arts and how to till the soil. And then they go back into the sea. Are those Atlanteans, or are those fucking UFOs going back under the ocean with initiate priests? I don't know, but they're telling this story because it's important, because there's a germ of truth in it. You know,
Right.
and that's why all cultures all over the world are telling this story, because this is where we come from.
So Riley, we put it to you: Atlantis, bullshit.
Or believe it.
I mean, neither.
That's the way it is.
Yeah.
Guess what? Atlantis is sort of the Schrodinger's cat of all this shit.
Yeah,
it is
that's
both
a great
dead
way to-
and alive at the same time.
awesome.
Right.
Yep.
You know?
I mean, I love it. I
Sure.
love thinking about it. It's great. Like and I definitely land more on the allegorical, like sort of, it's a way of condensing tens of thousands of years of human history that we could never really truly uncover all the way into ideas that are useful to society from ancient times and even up until now, about, like you said, like mistakes that can be made and ways of being and dealing. And it's very fun.
I think it was allegorical for Plato in the time, that tied into his themes of corrupt societies will collapse. And it was a teaching tool that later, more recently, in the late 19th century, as things were changing and like agricultural society is giving way to in the new industrial age, and people were looking around and going, maybe there's more to what we believe to be our own biblical history. They started looking back to some of these older stories, some of these other cultures that talked about these ancient civilizations, and went, let's write some new mythologies. And then that's what sort of kicked off the esoteric things like the Theosophist societies and new occult thinkings, because around
they're the retconners.
Because around that time was when everyone started going, let's ditch the Bible, let's ditch these old systems, and let's go back and do some old weird magic shit and see if we get better results. Because, it had been 2,000 years and Christ hadn't returned. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think they were starting to go, let's start rethinking things.
Well, so many people
and
have
then
the problem with that.
These old stories start to come to life in new ways and have new meanings, and most of them were allegorical in that, but in a different way. Now it's being applied to not society as a whole, but to the human spirit, the human potential.
That was my problem with the Bible. All the magic was dormant. Everything that was magical.
That's what I asked all the time. I was like, why aren't we talking to angels anymore?
Yeah, all the supernatural shit happened in the past, and yet they're like, you're like, it doesn't happen now. Oh, that's what the Lutheran and Catholic schools tell you. No, it's all that stuff's done.
We did
it only
that
happened
happen
back then. I say bullshit. Religiosity is happening all the time, everywhere around us.
It's true.
Let's have some burning bushes.
I have a better relationship with God now than I did when I was growing up in the Presbyterian church. All right, everybody.
That was fun.
Crazy episode. What a wait a minute. Whoa. Did you guys hear that?
Yeah.
What?
Hey guys, Bryce Johnson here. I was just about to hop in the shower and I couldn't stop thinking about, you guessed it, Atlantis. And I just felt like I didn't sort of land my idea, and it kind of came to me. I've got it. At least I think I've got it. So one of my favorite quotes is from Terence McKenna, and it's, "History is the shockwave of eschatology." And you're probably wondering what the hell that means. Eschatology is the study of end times and the apocalypse and stuff like that, right? Like Atlantis faced. And what he's saying there is that things that happen in the future, or that are determined to happen throughout the end of time, we can feel those reverberations throughout history. And perhaps those are the signals we're picking up on as, humans living in this world today, the New Jerusalem here in America, where we can celebrate what we want, worship how we please, whatsoever. So perhaps we're the new Atlantis, and we're facing destruction unless we don't change our ways, which is what Michael started the story with. That's it. I'm going to hop back in the shower here. Thanks for listening to Jet Ski Summer. We had so much fun making it. Love the hell out of you guys. Tank, come on, let's go, honey.
All right, everybody. That is wrapping up our Jet Ski Summer. Do us a favor, send us your listener files. Write to us at BigfootCollectorsClub@gmail.com. Shop Amazon with us, through us, when you click our Amazon storefront links in our show notes or bios on social media. Finally, if you want one last taste of BCC Jet Ski Summer, join us over on our Patreon, BCC The Other Side, where a $5 monthly pledge gets you 3 exclusive bonus episodes every month. As for me, follow me on Instagram at McMills. Listen to my other podcast, Slate Your Name, gearing up for season 2 later this fall. Follow at Slate Your Name Podcast on Instagram for updates. And don't forget to vote for us in the Paranormality Mag competition. Voting ends September 11th. What do you got?
Find me on Instagram at Mr. Bryce Johnson, Twitter at Bryce O. Johnson. Give us a vote.
Yeah, give us a vote. Come on. It's free. It takes 2 seconds. Also, I'm Peace Drone on Instagram.
Perfect. All right, guys, it's done. Summer's over. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks with a brand new episode and a brand new era of Bigfoot Collectors Club. Until then, good night.
And go get regressed. Bigfoot Collectors Club is produced by Riley Bray and Michael McMillan and scored and engineered by Riley Bray. Our theme song, Come Alone, is by Suneaters, courtesy of Lotuspool Records. Do us a favor and support the show and unlock 3 bonus episodes every month by becoming a member of our Patreon, BCC The Other Side, which can be found at patreon.com/BigfootCollectorsClub.
Way down below the ocean, where I want to be, she may be way down.